I have been doing remote work for almost 20 years. Take a moment to empathize with what 20 years ago, what the technology looked like. No video calls, no smartphones, no cloud documents, right? Like, we're going back in time. And that gave me a lot of experience about how to do this in its rawest form. And then it compounded over time. And now it's what I love, and I love sharing my knowledge with people like you. So I took my first company from co-located to hybrid in 2006. First company from co-located to fully distributed in 2007. Started consulting in about 2010, and then in 2012, went all in on remote work, created a consulting firm based on remote work, 2012. And then in 2018, started the Remote Work Association, which was a whole bunch of companies that were all testing the waters of remote work. And we all came together to share ideas. What are you doing? What am I doing? What are the patterns between all of these organizations that we can make this work? Now, all of that experience was me as an operations manager. I don't know how many operations managers you know, but we're not the life of the party, okay? We're out of the party. We're like in your kitchen organizing your utensil drawer so that you can find forks faster later. Like, we're not cool. But that was my role in the remote work world, is like, as everybody's talking about how great it is, I'm behind the scenes with my glasses on being like, well, how do we do this better? That's my role. And I am happy to share this information now with organizations. So I do consult in my consulting firm along with other experts around the world that are on my team. We talk about the unsexy side of remote work. You're welcome, because there are really cool conversations like AI and collaboration and team building to have that empower you as a remote worker. But guess what? There's a lot of really unsexy conversations about compliance and logistics and tools that also need to happen in order to create the space for you to succeed as a remote worker. So that's the conversation that we're going to have today. And these are the conversations that I have with organizations all over the world. So I've helped organizations that are brand new coming to remote work, like Zoom. Yes, 100% co-located prior to the pandemic. So companies like that are brand new to remote work, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. But then also the part that I love is helping organizations like GitLab and Buffer and Doist, my old friends that are saying, okay, well, we're creating a new pathway here. How do we do this better? How do we take our virtual organizational development and behavior to the next level? What are the systems, the infrastructures, the policies, the processes that we need to build in order to set our teams up for success in this next wave and the next evolution of remote work? So we're going to start with the basics today. The very first fundamental understanding that we all need to agree on is the mantra of remote workers, that work is something that we do, not somewhere that we go. You are successful in your job because you are you, not because of the seat that you are sitting in. So it is my job as an operational analyst and expert and consultant to build an environment around you, a virtual digital environment that enables you to be successful no matter where you are and no matter when you're working. So that's what we're going to talk about. And Rebecca and I were joking that we're going to go on tour together because we're like, oh my gosh, our content is so perfectly aligned. So she's like the cheerleader that's like, it's possible. And I come in here with my glasses and I'm like, here's how you do it. So when you see us on tour together later, you'll understand it all started here. You witnessed history. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about exactly what's going wrong and the problems that we need to fix in our organizations in order to make them more successful and your flexibility more sustainable. We want you to be able to keep your remote job. We want your employer to understand exactly how critical it is to the success of their business that you keep your flexibility. So these are the conversations that I have every day with organizations all over the world of all sizes. They come to me and they say, we're doing great. we're remote work, we're doing really, really well. It just needs to be like tweaked just a little bit. And I'm like, cool, cool, cool. So are you seeing the benefits, like the rewards of remote work yet? And they're like, oh, no, like what rewards are you talking about? But I'm sure that we're really, really close. I'm sure that we're probably seeing some, but what are you talking about? So I take them back to the report that I released, in February 2020. Ironic, yes. And that is where we talk about the gathering of information and data from sources like Global Workplace Analytics, Stanford, and Gallup that all combine to say there is a business case, and a very, very strong business case for remote work. This is where we see higher productivity, higher profitability, higher talent retention. And if you want to achieve these financial benefits in your organization, flexibility is a tool. That's why I personally became an advocate for remote work, because I was an operations manager and I was like, shit, this is helping me do my job a lot better. So I kept helping the organizations that I worked for adopt more and more flexibility because it helped our profitability increase so much. So they see these benefits and they're like, whoa, no, I'm not saving $20,000 per employee per year. What do I need to do? That's where we conduct what is called a virtual health analysis. And that is where we measure the change management process of the organization, what they, by task, by conversation, what they have, and more importantly, have not done in the change management process to prepare and adequately change their operational model to support virtual first work. And most of the time, they are not where they thought they were in this adoption model or in the maturity model. They are out of, where they thought they were about a 4.5 out of 5, actually 2 out of 5. No, that's not a fun conversation to deliver to the executives of a company. Thank you very much. So we talk about how we can help and what they can do in order to operate in a new way, because ultimately that's what this is about. It is not about just giving somebody a laptop, putting them in a different place and saying, congratulations, you're a remote worker now. Congratulations, we're a distributed company now. It's not that. The success of remote work is not about where people are working. It's about how they are working. It's about how we are operating as an organization to prevent and minimize the problems that we've been having for a long time. This is exactly what Rebecca was talking about in her presentation. We know that collaboration needs to improve. We know that information accessibility needs to increase, but how do we do it? And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to get into the details and the nitty-gritty of exactly how is a successful virtual first organization fundamentally operationally different than a co-located organization. It is not just grabbing a laptop and moving location. It is about how we interact with each other, how we interact with information, and more importantly, how we manage ourselves. So that word management is what it boils all down to. The success and the difference of remote work and virtual first operations is about how work is managed differently. And there's these 4 pillars, and we're going to go into each of them separately. And I also am happy to share this entire deck with you. Please find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, you're good. I got it. I see you. I got you. There's a lot of information. So find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, say, hey, girl, send me your deck. It'll be, well, I was going to say it'll be 5 minutes later, but no. Asynchronous communication. It'll be like 24 hours. So I'll send you the whole deck. And also ask me questions. So everyone has a writing utensil in front of you, whether it be your phone or your hand or a note paper, whatever. Prepare your questions. We're going to leave lots of time for questions at the end, okay? So, and you can ask me anything related to operational management, anything related to remote work. You can ask me my favorite color. I don't care. I am an open book. It's going to be more uncomfortable for you than for me, so ask me anything you want. Now, let's move on. Okay, so each of these pillars, we're going to go through each of them. And this is what we call at Distribute our 4-for-4 framework. This is the best way that we could distill decades of our experience in consulting and operational management ourselves into a guide, a playbook, a step-by-step transition plan for the change management of how to succeed in a virtual first operational model, not a virtual first workplace model, an operational model. Again, this is about how we're working, not where we're working. So let's go through each of these individually. Let's start with knowledge management. We talked about this during Rebecca's Q&A. This is documentation. This is what is so powerful and so successful about these organizations that you're seeing of like the remote work icons, the GitLabs, the buffers. Why are they so successful? It's going to start here. It's going to start with how knowledge is managed. The very first research study that I conducted as an independent consultant, I was ready to make my impact on the world, was about isolation. Why are remote workers feeling isolated? So we dug into it. We studied all the companies that we had access to. There weren't many at the time. And that's where we said, oh, where's this isolation coming from? What's the source? How are we labeling it? What we discovered is that the isolation of remote workers is not about social isolation. It's about informational isolation. And what that means is that they don't necessarily miss sitting next to somebody else. They miss having access to somebody else. Because at work, people are a resource. And if we feel disconnected from the people that we work with, we feel disconnected from the resources that we need in order to do our job effectively. So what's the solution? Well, the easy solution is that we go back to the original source, which is creating more proximity between those sources of information. But what if we change the source of information itself? What if we remove the subjectivity of verbal feedback and verbal collaboration, and we move the exchange of information to a more sustainable format? That is asynchronous communication. When we lean more into written communication and documentation of that written communication, what we're doing is creating information accessibility. We don't have to wait for a meeting. We don't have to wait for a person. We get to access the information that we need in order to do our job at any time of any day. And it increases the ability that we have to access any information that we have in the entire company. That is why the iconic distributed companies that you see have massive handbooks. GitLab's handbook, I think, is the most iconic. If GitLab's handbook was printed, it would be over 25,000 pages. It is a massive repository of information. That's the type of knowledge and empowerment that we are trying to create for our teams by creating that single source of truth mindset that Rebecca talked about. So this is what we need in order to create that efficiency in our teams. We see that remote workers are more efficient. Why? Because they have access to the information that they need to stay productive continuously. This is the metric that we will see increase if we create the resource for our workforces. It is a big job, but it is so much easier with AI. As somebody who, I'm not bitter about it, but wrote hundreds of handbooks without AI, please use AI. It is a gift to your organization, and it absolutely should be a team collaboration. Everybody should be involved in the creation of that resource. So start shifting your behaviors more towards documentation, creating collective intelligence, organizational information that will create that alignment between your team that you are looking for. This is what is going to create connection, not proximity. Distributed teams, in order to feel aligned, they don't share time and location. They share information. So the more that you can do that with your team, the more aligned you will feel. Now, here you go. Here's unsexy Laurel saying, hey, guess what? Let's turn this into action, because that's what operations managers do. Big ideas translates into tasks. So you're welcome. I'm giving you a to-do list. If you feel like your team needs more help with knowledge management, here are 3 things that you can do now, soon, and later in order to optimize the knowledge management in your organization. First, just focus on meeting notes and making sure that there are notes being taken. Transcription with AI is great, and that those are translating into action items that then are translating into your project management system. We'll talk more about project management next, but create that workflow where information is flowing out of synchronous channels into asynchronous channels. Also, you want to build that handbook. It's a daunting task, but optimize it. Chip away at it. It will serve you well. Last but not least, talk about the searchability of this information. Is it easy to find the information that you're looking for? Is your handbook not just a repository of information, but a navigational system to the information that you need for productivity? All right, next, let's talk about project management. In project management, we just had the greatest setup from Asana, right? This is absolutely perfect. This is what we were talking about. Why is project management so important? We talked about it. The actual case study of people being like, well, wait a second, we're just going to get caught in waiting for messages, and I don't know what I'm supposed to work on. Rebecca, what was that number? 55% of people don't know what they're supposed to be working on, and they're waiting for a task. And what was her answer? Well, we noticed that in distributed teams, they plan ahead. They're more proactive. Ta-da! Project management. So why is that so important? Because we are trying to reduce the collaboration necessary. Remember that bell curve? This is how we do it. We are not trying to isolate people by reducing the number of collaboration activities that they're participating in. We're trying to increase their productivity. So this is what it looks like, is really, really, really proactive problem solving. To put this into context, I just finished an engagement with Doist, which is another, iconic remote work company, and we realigned their OKR and KPI cadences. Each quarter, they spend 2 solid weeks of planning for that quarter. Not a stitch of the actual work is done for 2 weeks. They make a plan together. They connect as a team. They understand exactly what they're going to be doing, who is doing what, and then for 10 weeks of the quarter, they split and they say, all right, everyone, have at it. We're a team. We've got you. We know we've got each other's back and we're here if we need to. But everybody is empowered, equipped, and enabled to be as productive as possible because they invested so much in proactive problem solving and proactive project management. It's that democratization of project management that Rebecca was talking about. So invest in that project management planning. Empower everybody to understand exactly where they are and where they are going. You will see incredible, incredible results from this. Now, let me note that it is wonderful to have a tool like Asana. Plug, 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 wink, wink. It's fantastic to have a tool like that. However, is it necessary? No. Remember, 20 years ago, my first fully distributed team, our project management plan was literally a yellow legal pad in Starbucks. So don't get too focused on the tool doing the work for you. Make sure that you are using the tool effectively. We'll talk more about that later. But when you use these tools effectively and you're investing in the project management plan, what you're focused on and what you're enabling to have happen is that you're not just enabling business continuity, you're enabling individual continuity. And so it increases the organizational continuity from a grassroots level. When everybody is able to work more continuously, the whole organization works continuously. So that's what we want to see, is that continuity really being maximized by focusing on investing in the planning phase. So what behaviors do you need to exercise in your team for yourself and for your colleagues in order to get there? Move away from that reactive mindset. Move away from, let's meet about this, or I'm going to hold on to this question until I have a chance to talk about it with my colleagues. Move away from that, start getting out of the reactive habits, move on to proactive habits. And then your behaviors will follow. So we want to just shift our whole mindset away from reactive, move to proactive. If you do this, you will be absolutely amazed at the efficiency and the momentum of your team. If you are frustrated that your team keeps running into blocks, this is probably your problem. You need to spend more time planning where your train needs to go and how you're going to get there so that the train can move at full speed. Okay? So project management planning is absolutely essential. If this is resonating with you and you're feeling like, oh yeah, this is something that we could work on, first step, easy step, you can do it by the end of the day today. Just create a universal project management template that is universal to every organization, every department in your organization, every function, whatever word your company uses, right? So create a project management plan that everybody can access so that it's standardized information. After that, lean into your OKRs, your roadmaps. Like everybody has their plan, but how are those plans layering on top of each other? How are we not only maintaining the momentum of our individual team, but how is everybody's momentum combining together to create cross-functional momentum? And then after that, we're going to really curate a database of all of those templates and information to really maximize the historical intelligence of our organization. So I can not only be inspired and taught by my current colleagues, but past colleagues as well, or AI colleagues, okay? All right, that's project management. Let's move on to performance management. So we're starting really macro, getting a little bit more micro. So in knowledge management, we're talking about organizational change. Project management, we're talking more at the departmental level. Performance management, we're talking more about between you and your boss. How do you maximize the results, the expectations, and the productivity of individuals? Now remember, I'm an operations manager. I am not your feel-good friend that's like, how are you doing today? That's not my job. It's not my job to say like, oh, get the right person in the right seat at the right bus on the right time. That's not me. I'm the one working on the bus. I'm the one that's building your seat to be the best damn seat you've ever had. So you work on you work on being the best worker you can with the other experts today, and I'll have your bus ready and waiting. So this, if I had a nickel for every time I was asked this question, I would not be here right now because I would be on my private island, which is, Laurel, how do you know that someone's working if we can't see them? And I have to really control my stupid face, be very calm and professional, and I say, that's a good question. How do you know that they were working when you could see them? Because we've all done it. We talked about it with Rebecca's presentation. We all sat at a computer. We typed. Our brows were furrowed. We were focused. And we were on Amazon. We have all done it. We know that being able to see somebody is not indicative of their productivity. Them being in a certain place at a certain time has nothing to do with what they are actually creating. So how do we measure that, what they're creating? We measure it. This is what one of the Q&A was about too. How do we actually measure productivity? Rebecca talked about it. We focus on that output a lot more. We diversify what output means, but we also focus on the input. We focus on what are the resources that are needed in order to produce those results. So we're focused on how do we reduce the amount of meetings, the amount of supervision, the amount of tools and resources that are needed in order to produce those results. And that's what optimizes that formula for us. So how we do that is through a role plan. What was that number again? 55% of people don't know what they're supposed to be working on? Give them a damn role plan. This is what a job description looks like when steroids are pumped into it. We want them to know exactly what their time management chart looks like, what their OKRs are, how their performance is going to be evaluated in a rubric form. We want them to understand exactly what they're supposed to be doing and why they're doing it. When they have a resource like this, they can manage themselves more effectively. That's going to be the best seat that they have ever sat in so that they can do their job effectively. They can fulfill the experience and expertise which they have, which is why you hired them. So please make a role plan. Help them understand exactly what their role is so that they can supervise themselves from any location. Okay? So this is where we will see that stronger output. This is where we will see more results, but with less input. And that's absolutely critical for really maximizing that formula. So focus more on the role than the person. I told you I'm not your feel-good friend, so I'm not here to make you feel sparkly and shiny about yourself. I'm here to do your job really well. And what your job is, you need to know that. So focus more on the job when you're doing feedback. This is what the job requires. This is what the OKRs are. Stop focusing on the people quite so much. They can change. The job can't. So focus on the job in your feedback. Focus on their impacts, on their results. That is what they can drive towards in their intrinsic motivation. The results are going to prove their productivity, not where they're sitting. Okay? So if this is the section that you're worried about, that you feel like needs a change, just make sure that everybody has a role plan. This is something that you can do yourself today. It's not going to take more than an hour. So focus on your role plan first, then your colleagues, then integrate those into the performance evaluation rituals. After that, then you can strengthen those quantitative metric systems that we were talking about. Embed those results into your project management system so that all of that data is automated for you. Use those tools and leverage them. All right, everyone doing okay? All right, so we're going to do self-management last. This is our micro. This is the end of our funnel, and we're talking about really what you need in your role to be successful. We all know that by this point, your presence is not what makes you productive. But equally as much, being in a certain building is not what makes you successful. You are successful because of your skills, because of your ambition, and because you have been entrusted and empowered to do your job well. So that is what our culture and our ways of working need to be focused on, is trust and discipline and communication. It is good if somebody knows how to make a Zoom call, but we can train them on that pretty easily. And we can also see if they're bad at it, but we can't see discipline. We can't see self-efficacy. So this is what we need to focus on and prioritize in our workforce training, encouraging and nurturing these skills to build the best professionals that we possibly can, and especially the skills that we can't see. They have to be responsible for them themselves. The way that we do this is we develop a communication charter. Again, all of those iconic companies have a communication charter. And this is where we create that limbic synchrony where you start to act like the people around you. That's how we do it in virtual environments, is we actually explicitly dictate what are the behaviors that define our company culture, and we measure against them. So this is a communication charter. All of the companies have them, and you can absolutely should start one for your organization as well. What are the behaviors that you need and want to see that drive success and make a dependable employee in your organization? This is where you will see that talent performance and talent management metric just skyrocket. When people feel trusted and empowered, they will stay. All right, so last but not least, let's talk about those behaviors. How do we move there? The short version, just start treating your employees like adults. I'll just leave it there. And then focus on those tools. Remember, don't let your tools do your job for you. Use the tools strategically. Tools are no more than a room. You put one team member in a room and another team member in another room, or I should say group. Put one group in one room, another group in another room. One might have an awesome experience. One might have a terrible experience, depending on how they use the room. Tools are no different. Focus on how you're using your tools and using them in the same way, and you'll see better results. So write down those expectations. Prioritize soft skills in your workforce training, and then create as much psychological safety as you can around these behaviors. Behaviors like, you're a manager of one, I trust you. When everybody starts using that language, everybody feels empowered to give boundaries to each other of being self-efficacious. Is that a word? I don't think so. Okay, we'll move on. All right, let's summarize so that we can get to Q&A. This is your warning. Does everybody have a question? Well, you have a few seconds to get ready. So write down your questions, and I do get through questions fast, so I want a lot of you to be prepared. Introverts, I see you. I'll give you instructions in a second. All right, so remember, successful workplace flexibility is not about where we are working. It's about how we are working. That has to be at the foundation of your entire operational model. And then you will be able to adopt these behaviors, these tools, these resources more effectively, and you will see those results, those rewards, both financial and emotional, in your team if you adopt the right framework operationally. So embrace that asynchronous communication, develop the written documentation that we talked about, move those measurements into results and quantitative formats as quickly as possible, and then finally, just be a good person. Just trust people. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you that as a business professional, but you'd be surprised. So please just trust your people, and when you do, you will model that behavior yourself and you will receive more trust in return. So this is why we're here. This is why we do what we do, is because this is not about you working in your sweatpants for the rest of your career. That's a good bonus. But this whole movement of remote work has the power to change socioeconomics around the world, like we heard about yesterday, but it also has the entire power to change business and the way that you experience work in your life. So please embrace the change, put in the hard work, and now ask me questions. Yes.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I work for a large corporate bank based in Denver. I'm an individual contributor, but I manage our handbook, our lending handbook. And I've really been working to try to change the behaviors of sharing documents online versus attaching them, and getting to the point where we've got that knowledge management discipline that was the first pillar you put up there.
Good.
And I get pushback from our senior leaders. I'm in every meeting telling people we don't attach Word documents and we don't print the internet. Just trying to get those behavioral changes that allow us to have that depository of information rather than just tacit knowledge being shared. How, as an individual contributor, can we push for more of that knowledge management discipline?
So when they see the reward, they'll be more motivated to understand why we're putting this work in. So I think the AI is a massive benefit to be able to say, why are we creating all this documentation so that we can leverage it for these benefits? So what do you use for your handbook tool?
SharePoint,
that's great, actually. So in SharePoint, if you have a whole Microsoft suite, you've now got Microsoft Copilot as well. And boy, howdy, the first day that you type in, hey, I missed a meeting last Thursday. What were my assignments from it? And your 3 assignments come back to you. It's a damn good day. So leverage that AI. The more documentation, the more information that we can feed to the AI, the more that we can drive results from it. So create some very carefully curated use cases and some stories that are very compelling for the personalities of your executive team. Show them what they can get from it, and then they'll be like, ooh, that's fancy, I want to try, and then it will drive the behavior. Executive leadership are often like toddlers, so just give them something shiny and they'll follow it.
Thank you.
Global expert.
And right now I'm kind of doing like an operations level.
Operations architecture. I remember that from yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. How do I get to do what you do? It's fascinating.
Well, thank you. Operations is so fun. Yes, I totally agree. So focus on the processes. So in the role that you described yesterday, you were talking a lot about processes, workflows, and that. Build a portfolio around that. Like, I can make a flow chart, I can make a process, I can make a system, I can find patterns of behavior. Just create a portfolio of all of that operational work that you do. And then if you want to use that for consulting, you absolutely can. That becomes your foundation for making pitches to other companies. Or if you want to use that as a portfolio for an actual job, then you can say, these are the different areas of operations that I specialize in. That's the bittersweet part of being in operations, is that you do everything. You have to have expertise in everything. So be broad and diverse in the experience that you show, and say like, I can, I do job architecture just as well as I do process development, and build a portfolio and just start getting out there and hustling.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question.
Especially in your role with operations. I'm just curious to know, what are you looking forward to learning and adopting as a skill set moving forward, especially with Gen AI?
Oh, I love that. So I'm intimidated by AI. Like, I've just felt so solid in processes and systems for so long that I have a mentor that well, it's a friend, but I call him every 2 weeks and I'm like, okay, tell me what I need to know about this, and tell me. So he's the one that gave me the Microsoft Copilot training myself. And he was like, all right, this is how you use Copilot. So AI is definitely a stretch zone for me, and I'm ready to embrace the power of it, but I'm intimidated by the power of it, and I feel like I just can't keep up. But I'm excited about the potential. So I'm really excited to figure out how to leverage the AI for organizational behavior to help see the behaviors that we can't see virtually. So if somebody stops posting as frequently, that's a red flag to check in on them, or to drive behaviors like, this person is using this type of language, let's work on diversity, equity, inclusion with them. But leveraging the visibility that I have as a manager to be a better manager. That's what I'm excited about.
I currently work for a small consulting firm, and just hearing your attitude and the way you speak about it, it's just incredibly refreshing, and I just really want to appreciate you for that.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind, very generous. Thank you. Anybody else want to give me a compliment?
So my company that I work for has a really polished product, but behind the scenes, it's like going into someone's house and you try to open a door. They're like, please don't look in that room. Our Google Workspace is a disaster.
Yeah.
And everyone seems to think if I have an idea, I create a new spreadsheet. Which folder is it?
Do you hear the moans of empathy? You are not alone. So yeah.
And it's almost muscle memory to figure out where I need to go to find the resource I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. And to new employees, it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
How can you just inspire people to start cleaning that up?
Yeah.
And have it start to finally make sense and have that single source of truth that you were talking about?
Yeah, so let me validate 100%. So the icon of single source of truth is GitLab, right? I was the head of remote at GitLab, and it's a shit show behind closed doors there too. Like, everybody has a shit show behind closed doors, okay? So your shit show is not special. So everybody has this. Microsoft, don't even get me started on Microsoft. Like, so bad. Like, do we know how to use our own tools? No, we do not. Okay. So everybody has the closed doors. So what we do is baby step our way into change management. And we start with our own behaviors, and we just say, how can I clean up my space? So we start there. The communication charter is the solution that you're looking for. So in that communication charter, you're going to talk about hygiene standards, how we need to name files, how often we need to audit files, how often we need to clean out our own files, what the offboarding process is when there's an exit or departure. That is where that all comes into play. So in the communication charter, that's where we create that documentation, and then you integrate it right into onboarding. So you do not hope that people observe your behaviors and follow suit. You create trainings on this, and you make it mandatory for every single person. So there is a lot of work to do. It can start very, very small and scale up, but yes, it's a very, very common problem. Start with just like naming files, and that'll keep you busy for a while.
I have a related question. Like you said, this is a problem at a lot of organizations. So my question for you is, have you seen like a librarian or like a scribe role that's been created in either organizations or departments to create and manage these process documents or workbooks?
Yes. So yes and no. Often falls default to the people operations team. And so but people operations is already so inundated, right? Don't give them more work. So we want this to be a democratized effort. We want as many people to be involved as possible. So that's where it comes back to the change management of like, just start with your space. Write down your workflows, get it uploaded into the handbook. make sure that your team has your project management plan for the quarter uploaded by the beginning of the next quarter, stuff like that. So we want it to be as democratized as possible. That being said, is it nice to have a project manager for this? Yes, but never give them the responsibility of actually creating the content themselves. They will go nuts, and it's impossible for them to know what's going on every minute of every day. So they can be the responsible party, they can be the informed and consulted party, but never make them actually accountable for producing the work. And they could report into people operations, and that would be a good function for them.
You are a hoot. Thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody give her a round of applause. I mean,